We are recording.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Good morning.
We're just letting folks in from the waiting room. I have to start off by apologizing too. I'm having a little bit of connectivity issues, so if it gets spotty or otherwise, I just apologize in advance. Okay, we have several folks in, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Oh, and Tyler just added into the chat that Jayla isn't able to join today because her iPad is acting up. It's one of those days for IT. I'm convinced of it. All right, if we could go ahead and just move into the first slide, please. Thank you. So I wanted to take a few minutes to just catch everyone up and go over some of the stakeholder engagement feedback. When we met last time, we had concluded the individual and family listening sessions and surveys, but we still had several more sessions to go at that point. So now that we've completed a few additional, here's some of the information. If anybody attended the webinar, we went over similar information as well there at a very high level, just to give some feedback on what was shared and how we plan to take that information and move forward. So through the listening sessions and the surveys, we received so much valuable input and collaborative feedback. I can't thank everyone enough for their willingness to share, their advocacy, and what really became and started to feel like a good spot for collaboration and us just talking about our shared values for our system, or identifying what those shared values would be and should be, so that we could figure out what are our priorities as a system. What do we want to work towards? What are the things we should be working towards? And I strongly feel, and I've shared this with many of you in private conversations too, that what we do every day and work for needs to be based on individuals and the experiences that they are wanting and their goals and what they think is important in the families as well in our developmental services system. So going out, talking to folks, getting feedback from surveys, talking to people one-to-one in groups, just hearing that, making sure that we have our eyes on the things that will make our service system the strongest it can possibly be, and also allow and encourage and make sure that there is access to quality services. So going over just a little bit of our approach to get all of this input, we coordinated 8 different listening sessions, as well as individual surveys for each stakeholder group. So the groups included individuals and families, our area agencies, our service providers, and our service coordinators. So for each of those groups, we did a listening session as well as a survey, just in case folks weren't able to come, in case they weren't able to share information live in a session, also having that option for a survey. We anticipated that there would be different priorities, perspectives, and experiences, and we just wanted to make sure folks had the space and the opportunity to share that in the way they felt the most comfortable sharing. So for all of our stakeholders, we tried really hard to focus the sessions on really what's working well and what could we be working on to make things better or improve that experience for individuals who are participating in services and their families who are supporting, and what resources people really wanted to hear more about, talk about, or really encourage BDS to be working to develop in partnership with some of the other professionals in our agencies and our systems. We also talked about other things. People definitely, came and wanted to talk about things outside of, just
Hi,
that.
this is Sue Silsby. You left me a message to give you a call regarding my catering order.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So moving from that, excuse me, sorry, Sue threw me off, and I hope her catering order gets in. So we wanted to talk to people just broadly, and the information and really just the stories that people were sharing. This I think was critical for us, to get back to make sure that we're focused on and get back to that North Star of why we're all here, why we do what we do, what we're all passionate about, and just making sure that we are taking our cues from the most important perspectives in our system, which is individuals and families. So we received over 360 responses and 242 from individuals and families, 25 from service providers and 20 from service coordinators and 73 from area agency personnel, which could be service coordinators and providers as well, which I know is a little confusing in the landscape, but 360 responses total on the surveys, as well as all the folks that participated in the listening sessions. That was roughly 383 across 5 different sessions, which were 3 in person, not as highly attended in the in-person, but I have to say the folks that we had the opportunity to meet and to talk to, again, a great experience. And I'm happy we did the in-person sessions and then 2 virtual sessions, which were much more highly attended, I think just because of the convenience of having a hybrid option too. And we did a 1 provider agency listening session, 1 service coordinator listening session, and 1 area agency listening session. So from that, with that information, next slide, please. We were able to really take a look and pull out the shared priorities. I don't think this will be a surprise to some of the folks on this call. I think that it's things that we've been talking about, things that we've been working towards, but having the information to just ensure that it isn't any one of us that's kind of saying, hey, we think this is what's right. We think this is what we should do. Having the collective feedback from everyone to really provide that input so that truly we have captured those shared priorities. Now, with any type of information feedback process, I think we can always do better, try harder, get to more people. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, because within this very group, the last time we met, the question was posed, hey, how do we get to folks who don't have the time to commit to coming to monthly sessions and monthly work groups, or different listening sessions, different surveys? It's something that we always want to try to do better at and try to get as much feedback as possible. But for now, I think that the information that we were able to get really gives us a sense of are we focusing on the right things moving forward? If we want the strongest, most effective and efficient service delivery system that there can be out there, that's steeped and based in helping individuals and access quality services, these are the things that we need to start off with. So summarizing them: communication, just that desire for clear, open, and transparent communication really came through from everyone as something to focus on, to continue striving for, to strengthen as we go along, and from my perspective, to evolve. Just keep trying, and people have been so generous in their feedback and letting us know, gee, try this, or maybe tap into this group, or maybe think about facilitating it in this different kind of way to make it a better experience. And we're going to keep doing that, and the input that people share with us, again, is invaluable. In addition to that, individuals and families really seek increased communication and updates regarding changes, things coming up on the horizon, things happening right now, and when things are going on, just checking often and frequently before, during, and after to see how things are going. If we've started working on something based on our shared values, our shared priorities, even if everybody's saying, yes, this is the thing to work on, this is where the focus should be, we can't forget to check in with people to make sure it's either going to plan, or if there's something that wasn't accounted for, that we're able to pivot or talk as a group about what we need to do in order to continue to advance the vision or recalibrate the vision. Area agencies, service coordinators, and service providers identified the need for enhanced communication amongst us as a group as well. Ensuring that there's communication between each of them and also between BDS, or the Bureau of Developmental Services, to really make sure that there's efficient service delivery. Moving from communication, one of the most advocated for topics that came forward from all of the groups was an increase to wages to add to address the workforce shortages for direct support professionals and service coordinators. Individuals and families really supported the idea of a wage increase so that they could attract and retain qualified providers. And area agency service coordinators and service providers identified as well that same focus area as well in order to retain staff, to attract staff, and to improve the quality of life for the individuals that they are supporting. In addition to wages, and I don't think any of these come as a surprise to folks, but stakeholders really asked for robust training to be made available, from the statewide perspective. Really, what are those some of those overarching expectations, not in the vein of replacing what a service provider agency or service coordination agency or an area agency would do for their staff, but just what are those general expectations from I guess a system level, we would call it, to make that information available, readily available, and accessible for folks. In addition to that, area agency service providers and service coordinators, they really wanted resources to support new staff and the ability to advance career development. That function too, and really identifying through that feedback the value in that, so that we have a robust provider network inclusive of some service coordinators, really being able to attract people to New Hampshire in general. And not just maybe moving from one service provider agency to another or one service coordination agency to another. How can we be creative? How can we be innovative in the state to really promote the direct service professional position as a career opportunity and look into different, options for career ladders and lattices in combination with the training resources and materials that folks are seeking? Combined again still with us taking a look at rates and how that might be able to help more of a comprehensive approach to trying to address the workforce issue. Because as we all know, sometimes money isn't just the answer. It's multifaceted, sometimes what leads to these issues, especially in the area of something as big as workforce. So it too has to be multi-pronged in how we address it if we want to have a successful path going forward. In addition to that, individuals and families really seeking strategies to expand services, reduce wait times, access respite services. The availability of respite came up multiple times, and just generally support in navigating available services. Area agency service providers and service coordinators asked for flexibility in service delivery, some sort of, waiver 101 guide or training. What are the services out there? They thought that would be a helpful tool both for themselves as service coordinators to assist individuals and their families, and then also to have that available for individuals and families too, so that everybody knows what services are out there, how to access them, what that service can do for them, and working towards their goals that they've outlined for their own lives. And can we move? I think we moved up ahead a slide, but that is okay. So what to expect next and the things that are coming your way. So taking that information and us figuring out, okay, now what? We have information from folks. We definitely got some marching orders in terms of those shared values, those priorities. So now we have to take that information. We have to create an action plan. We have to, start responding to those needs right away, so that people know and truly feel that their input was heard. They see their input in the actions that are happening. So in terms of communication, and Kathy, I see your hand is up. So actually, before I dive into the communication piece, I'll let you have the floor.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Under the idea of putting up and maintaining a resource webpage, which is a great idea, but can I ask that whoever the state engages to create that has some experience in user interface for people with disabilities? I cannot tell you how many times I go on web pages and they are so frustrating and impossible to navigate because they're not intuitive, they're not clear. The buttons and the choices are not perhaps in language that we would consider plain language. So I would just like to make the ask that the state hire a vendor that has some demonstrated experience in creating websites or web pages with the intent that they be used by people with a variety of disabilities. That's it.
Great suggestion. Thank you, Kathy. So I don't envision us hiring a vendor. I think it's something we'll be doing. We'll be trying to work through. What we have done is taken a look, and we have sought different technical assistance in creating that. We've taken a look at other states and what they do, the ones that are really kind of hitting it out of the park, that do a really great job, and really have, from our perspective, and narrowing down which states do we look at, who are the states that are just really excelling in person-centered thinking in general, not just with regard to service planning. So, making sure that all of the tools that we have are focused in that area and make sure that it's truly accessible. What I will say is, for anybody in this group, if you, as you're going about your daily activities, if you find a web page that you think like, this is it, this is the best, it really is, makes sense in navigating, and it's a good example of how a web page should be set up, please forward it forward. Grab a screen grab or just a link and send it on forward, and we're happy to take a look and see what we can do to start modeling and creating just different efficiencies. Same thing with the web page, and we're going to actually go have a conversation about the web page, because it's up. It's a work in progress. We're continuing to add things to it and to develop it. But just like everything else, we want to keep evolving it based on the feedback that everyone's sharing, what's working, what's not working, things of that nature. So from the communication standpoint, the web page that we jump into, having that request for the dedicated resource page, we have a page up now, and it has so much information on it, but it kind of has become a bit of a catch-all. And folks, sometimes don't even recognize or realize some of the tools that are in there, everything from service coordination functions to the list of provider agencies that are available in the state. All of those tools are up on the website, but if folks don't know how to navigate to it, or when you navigate into it, where to find those materials, then, the value of those materials kind of gets lost a bit. So we've created the dedicated individual and family resource page. And I believe we're also putting a link to it on the provider, if memory serves correct. I'm trying to envision it in my mind. I apologize. On the right-hand side, if you're on the provider page, there's a link right at the top to the individual and family page. And if you're on the individual and family page, there's a link to the provider page. Again, kind of us just making that effort to make it easier to navigate as well. Or if you're a service coordinator in that space and you're working on something, grabbing certain tools, and you want to hop over and show someone the individual and family page, or even just take a look there to, see from your perspective if certain tools are in there that would be helpful to give feedback. We really want to make the web page more intuitive to navigate. So we've also, as I mentioned, we'll include the links to it, and Montreal just dropped it in the chat. We have a couple screen grabs after, but please, during the meeting, after the meeting, if folks want to hop onto the link and give some feedback. It's been coming in already since we had our info session or webinar with the commissioner earlier in May, I believe. It was just about a month ago. So the feedback's been coming in, and it's really been great to see the community starting to jump in and engage in the sharing and the creation of that page. We also have different ways to contact the Bureau so that folks don't have to set up a separate email. They can just click a button and get feedback in, ask questions, and really start providing the feedback that way too. So if you're on the webpage, you can actually just click the button if you have a thought or an idea about enhancing it as well. Amplifying individual and family voices is a theme as well that has come up, and right now, what BDS has been trying to do is review the stakeholder groups to identify ways to increase the voices of individuals with lived experience and their families. Like I mentioned before, a couple of slides ago, how do we hear from more people? How do we do better with our stakeholder engagement to hear as much feedback as we possibly can? In ways that make sense for people and are supporting their different styles and preferences and how they communicate that information and where they communicate that information. So we're taking a look at some of our structures to see, does it really, enhance that opportunity? Is it the best way to do it? We've talked to several families too who had some great ideas in direct response to the question that this group posed about how to reach more people and hear that info. In a few slides, we'll talk about some of our planned engagement opportunities over the summer, and we'll talk about some of the resources too that we're working on over the summer to make things available as quickly as possible and get some of those resources and tools out to folks and just continue getting that feedback. I mean, from my perspective and, from BDS's perspective, communication is amazing, and communication, in order for it to truly be communication, needs to be ongoing and consistent. It's not a once a year thing or a one-time thing. It has to continue to happen, multiple times throughout the year so that we're really talking to folks and hearing the feedback. As I mentioned before, whether we're in a change or not, going through any type of, something different in the system, it's just really critical that we're talking to folks at different points in time. From the workforce investment standpoint, really folks wanted us to finalize some work that had begun a period of time ago around taking a look at the rates for the DD waiver, at this point being our largest of our 3 waivers. In response to, really all of those comments and commitments for investment in our workforce, we're going to continue to leverage our rate work group that's been happening for a couple of years at this point to finalize the rate development for the DD waiver. So that work's going to continue and really pick back up later this summer. The rate work group has a pretty full agenda. They've been amazing. What they've been working on the last few months has been the exceptions process. So taking a look, once somebody participates in their CIS assessment, the information that comes from that, maybe it just doesn't quite, paint the picture of someone's support needs that they or their team or their family really feel makes the most sense. So along with having a process that's very transparent in helping to determine someone's support needs, at the very same time, there also needs to be a process to say, hey, this isn't quite the right fit. I don't think we expect or even want a system where it infers or implies that there's a one size fits all solution to anything. And the same is true when we start talking about rates. So the exceptions process and making sure that that's developed alongside with the rates, not an afterthought or not, something that comes about after we get into it and realize, oh, gee, we need another process. Having that developed is really critical. So the rate work group has been going through, taking a look at some components of what a strong exceptions committee should be or should look like, or strong exceptions process, should look like. Taking cues from other states, but definitely making sure that the feedback is tailored to what New Hampshire needs specifically based on that feedback. It's been a great process, and I'm excited for the work that'll continue over the summer with the rate group too, in the areas of cost reporting and taking a look at some of those tools and upcoming activities, and then the rates themselves. From a training and development standpoint, I apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, I just lost my screen a little bit, but that's okay. I generally know what the slides are. So from a training and development standpoint, just enhancing and customizing services through, getting some expert guidance, bringing in some technical assistance. Really the area that this came up in and was identified was in the area of participant directed and managed services. Families sharing just what they're experiencing in that process. Again, from the what's working well, what do we need to do better at as a service delivery system, and how do we make sure that someone's experience and how their participation in services looks from their perspective in their living room day to day is just, allowing them to focus on living their life and their best life and not being really entrenched in the system, I'll say, or the administrative parts of the system. So how can we take a look at how services work and how they're working to support people, and those ways where they might just kind of be, clogging the process a little bit. In addition, seeking seeking expertise in the area of intensive treatment services, and really strong, representation across all of the groups, which just, makes my heart happy, to make sure that we are focused on person-centered thinking and planning. Almost every group have this as a top priority, and I think it's a testament to our system. We can do better in this area. We should always be striving to do better, but just the fact that all of our stakeholders and all of our, families, our community at large, said this is what we need to make sure we're focusing on throughout everything that we look at, to make sure that that is, the individual's always at the center of anything that we're thinking about doing. So is hearing that, really strongly coming through, and us going about trying to figure out what are the resources and supports that need to happen to make sure that everyone is following person-centered thinking practices, from planning to, any interaction that someone may have, and including BDS and everything we do. We should be keeping person-centered, the person at the center of every decision we make, every idea that we have, and then most importantly, talking to people to see, are we hitting it? Do we have the right outlook? And just working towards that. So again, it's not a surprise, some of this stuff, but it's always nice to kind of see the information come back and just affirm the different commitments and those different values that we share within our system in New Hampshire. Help us, really work towards identifying best practices and enhancements for New Hampshire service delivery system, and make sure, and I can't say it enough, that we have a strong system that has available services and quality services for folks. Additionally, we have already started developing various user-friendly resources. So we're going to be collaborating with multiple stakeholder groups to develop user-friendly resources, such as I mentioned the waiver guides, the 101 type information for folks. And we're going to be doing a waiver 101 type series over the summer as well, to talk about waiver services and really make sure that we're doing this, with individuals and families as our intended audience, to talk about the services available in New Hampshire. What are they? What and how can they help? Because those service definitions, I think they're great for some of us when they outline the specifics, the nitty gritty of a service. But really what we need to be focusing on is getting that information to folks in a way that really says, how does this service help to support me in working towards my goals? Other resources that we have in development, we're trying to work on a service coordination QA type checklist for service authorizations based on the feedback from service coordinators. They did share that, hey, we'd really love to be able to anticipate a bit more what type of paperwork needs to come in with a request for a service authorization, maybe cut down any back and forth that might come as a result of some of that information. An opportunity that we might be missing when we have a checklist. So it really is intended to say, hey, for every service authorization that's submitted, A, B, and C should accompany that. But if there's, in certain circumstances, additional information may be needed, and those circumstances are this, and this is the information that should be provided along with that. Again, the goal there, just kind of finding efficiencies, sharing information, and creating tools. Also a service coordinator waiver service description tool for the service agreement. So, this came up from the service coordination sessions as well, where they said, gee, it would be helpful so that, there wasn't as much back and forth on the amendment side. So the previous one was the service authorization. So that, that approval to submit billing for any service. The service agreement really is the document, as you all know, that talks about someone's goals, but also sets up the services and those expectations for those services. So that way somebody can pick it up and say, okay, Jess is going to be accessing community participation services, 30 hours a week, and it'll really outline some of that. And what the service coordinators have shared is that it might be a helpful tool, especially if there's a newer service coordinator, to have some sort of either template or, a tool that says, hey, for every service that's described within the actual service agreement, these are the things that should be listed. There's work happening on a universal progress note template to take a look at how we standardize that, again, at the request of the provider agencies. And I know our partners at CISNY have had, lots of tools available too. So us leaning into their expertise through their uniformity of practice groups and, any group that we can tap at this point to make sure that we're getting the right people at the table to weigh in on some of the tools that we're developing and, that they're as user-friendly and functional as possible. The 504 function tool, we have heard this as well from the different provider agencies. Hey, HEM 504, our administrative rule for providers, since some of those relationships have changed a bit, it'd be really great if you had some sort of document that might outline, what if I'm a new provider joining our service delivery system, what are the things that I should be aware of at kind of a high level in a general sense. So making that tool available. And then we've been asked to create a family-friendly pass-through service guidance. Families have reached out and said, hey, we're hearing that pass-through services can be a little complex. There's pass-through guidance that's been issued, but it's directed really more towards service coordinators and providers. So some guidance for a family on what a pass-through service is, if that term's thrown around, what does it mean and what's my interaction with that? So those are just some of the things that we've started brainstorming directly based on the feedback that people identified as either questions or challenges or, just more information would be really critical. So I apologize. It's a lot, but it was a lot of good feedback. And I don't love just talking at everybody. So why don't I take a break? And Kathy, your hand is up, and I'm not sure if it's a new question or if it's still from before, but certainly any questions that other people might have so far on the feedback.
I'm sorry. Let me take it down. I'm not used to this Teams format, so forgive me. No, I have no question at this point. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Anything from anybody else? I mean, anything that surprises anyone or that you're surprised that you're not seeing collectively?
Jess, I'm trying to find the raise my hand button and I can't find it.
It's okay.
So,
go for it. Will.
I'm raising my hand. So thank you for this presentation. And maybe I'm going to get too much into the weeds here, but you're asking for a lot of budget here. And it's a budget year coming up. So are you in the process of developing an efficiency budget that will cover all this, as well as the new rates that we expect to see for providers?
Yeah, that is part of the plan. So the communication, the training development, access to services, those are all things I feel pretty confident that we're able to work in now. I think as we all would anticipate, though, once the rates are completed, if they're showing that we might need to make a significant or ask for a significant investment or any investment, we'll want to have that information prepared by this fall. So in addition to accelerating this work, just because people are saying, hey, we need this, please work on this as quickly as possible. Also, because the budget planning has to happen pretty shortly, we want to make sure that we have some numbers available. So that would be part of the budget request.
So does this mean we'll see rates actually come out soon from the rates group?
I think that from the rates group, you guys will be able to take a look. So essentially what happened and where we were when things left off in the fall, we're using that brick build methodology. And if I could kind of say this in a way that for my own mind, I guess, to make sense of where we were, most of the bricks were together, but not quite. And in addition, there was an anticipated cost of living increase from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And since the entire rate that's being developed is based on the DSP wage at the base, that had a significant impact on what the outcome would be once all of the different things were compiled. So what we've really asked to happen now is, hey, unpause from anything, please go ahead and start putting that information together, putting those bricks together. So that way we can see what is the final picture looking like for our system and what we really need from a service standpoint based on all that cost reporting that happened.
So one last question, sorry. So let's assume your efficiency budget is denied. Have you prioritized how the spending will be done?
So generally speaking, yes, we have to have a plan of how spending will be done. If the efficiency budget's denied, and I mean, I've been around the state for a long time, so sometimes through that process, we have to come to the table multiple different times and take a look. Our first approach, though, is to really make sure that we are demonstrating we were advocating for what our system needs. And if there are other constraints that we have to work with, which is always uncomfortable, we'll jump in and make those decisions and figure out what we have and how to make the best with what we have. But our first approach, is definitely going to be to get it all together and ask for really, truly what the results of all of that cost reporting and the collective, culmination, I guess, more so than collective, the culmination of what all that feedback looks like, so that we can figure out what's the right rate for each of the services in New Hampshire, so that we have quality services available to folks with a provider network that's sufficient to meet the needs and make sure that there are providers available for folks. It's amazing that we don't have a wait list at our state. I'm at a conference right now. There are colleague states that still have wait lists. But what we know in New Hampshire, too, is that simply funding the wait list doesn't mean that everyone's getting their services. And I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, you guys all know this, you feel this. So to me, it's really critical that we are able to demonstrate what our service delivery system truly needs from an investment standpoint, and then start from there.
Thank you.
Welcome. And I know I think we have other colleagues, and I apologize about a small screen today, so I can't quite see the whole group unless someone's speaking. But if anybody else internally has any way in on that or update, information, or if I didn't quite hit the mark on the timeline over the summer.
You did a great job, Jess.
Thanks, Lori. I had a feeling you were out here. All right. All right, so let's hop to the next slide if that's okay. Thank you, Jess. In terms of our stakeholder information and it says our strategy, but it's just really what I want to do, what the Bureau wants to do over the summer to make sure that we're getting out, talking to people, but actively working on some of those resources and tools that we identified. So through all of that information that we compiled across the different stakeholder groups, we've heard the asks for expanded opportunities to get involved and really just support the efforts that we're taking on here to start strengthening, make sure that we're getting as many voices as possible, and really just the opportunities to share those stories. And when I say share stories, I mean everything from just what's happened prior to this to just, hey, day to day, this is what my day to day looks like, and this is how a certain thing impacts it. This is how completing a certain form impacts it. This is the stuff that really gets in the way of the day to day, as well as the stuff that more fundamentally gets in the way of accessing services. So it's from the really macro and high level of our service system and what's good, what's right, and what do we need to work towards, all the way to the micro view of things like the day-to-day impact to someone's experience and how they approach service participation and how their families impacted too by different functions in service participation. So things that we want to look at are resource review and development. So I mentioned a whole bunch of initiatives we have, but we want to make sure that we're not just making a bunch of decisions at BDS and putting things out. I mentioned, as I referenced before, if we're creating a tool, we need to talk to the folks that would be utilizing the tool to make sure that it's a valuable tool. We want to focus on group participation. So, continuing to have work groups. One of the things that came through from several families when we were trying to figure out how to get, how to just talk to more individuals and families is, having topic focused work groups, maybe time limited, there'll be 1 or 2 sessions on the service agreement, for example. That way folks kind of know what that commitment is. It's not something we're asking them to commit to, every month for an unidentified period of time, and a variety of different topics, so that if somebody is maybe not inclined to join a bigger group, a broader group. They might, if they are very passionate about a certain topic area, be able or willing to join, an hour or two to give feedback and just make sure that their experiences are heard and that their input is provided. So, I mean, this has given us some opportunities, as I mentioned before, to take a look at some of the structures and how we get feedback, how we talk to people, and making sure that there are multiple different ways. So we had the webinar last month. The webinar is a great tool, not a great tool for everyone. So we want to have it available for folks that maybe just want to check in and hear high-level feedback on what's going on. But we need to also make sure that we're having opportunities for two-way conversations, work groups as well, just, multiple ways to share feedback. And if we could move to the next slide, please. I apologize again for anybody that jumped on a little late. Technology is not my friend today, so I got a little bit of a lag in my computer, and I'm making the best of it, but I appreciate everyone's. I hope I'm not frustrating anyone too much with some of the lags. So upcoming engagement opportunities, I'm so excited for the summer, and we want to be really respectful too. We know the summer is a time period when, just families and individuals really value that time. So we don't want to have so much going on that it feels like there's just, a big request from BDS over the summer. But at the same time, I think it'll give us some good opportunity for folks to jump on, do some virtual ways to participate in some of those focused areas that I'm hoping to talk about over the summer. And we say fall, but I'm thinking kind of into like the September period, not too far into the fall. I really want to talk to folks about the service agreement and, what's working, what's not working. Is it a tool that adds value to someone's experience and service, and that really helps them to identify their goals and their hopes, and how the services, both in developmental services, help them to work towards those goals, as well as other services that might not be part of BDS from a conversational standpoint. How might those things interact with each other? The waiver guide, I mentioned it before, but I want to make sure that we're talking to folks about what they want to see in a waiver guide too. It's that fine line between having something to react to, but then also talking to people to see what we want to develop for them to react to. So, each of these groups might start at slightly different points, depending on how much feedback we got to on a particular area. PDMS, we've got a kind of multi-pronged approach here. We want to bring in some technical assistance from a national expert to talk to us about PDMS, to make sure that we have our eye on the right things, but make sure to get out over the summer to talk to folks too about what is working well in PDMS. What do you want to make sure stays and remains? It's important in PDMS. What are some of the things that might be a bit of a bottleneck or a roadblock, and that you'd love to see enhanced or evolved, strategies that we might be able to tap into, things that other states. We've got great feedback from, in conversations and feedback through the listening sessions too, from folks who maybe lived in other states prior and have had interactions with services in different areas of the country. Some positive, some, maybe they've seen opportunities in New Hampshire that maybe other states haven't quite realized, but all of it important for us to consider as we're taking a look at anything. And again, all of these conversations too may not lead to changes. I think if folks take a look at the service agreement and they say this, it's great, we love it, we don't want it to change, well, then that is, what our community has shared. And we know at least we are, we have a tool that represents, what people want. And the last thing is forms. I would love to do, I wouldn't say I would love to, I will be doing different sessions with different groups too, to get those different perspectives from the individual and family perspective on the various forms, but also from service coordinators and from providers too. What are the forms people really love? What are the forms that they're just scratching their head on? And I mean the forms themselves, the frequency of them, just what is the feedback people have to share, so that we can take that back and either look at the form itself, or maybe look at certain rules attached to them around like frequency of turning in certain forms, and the reason that we have that stuff. Sometimes there might be very good reasons, and then we can communicate that back with everybody too. It might not change the result, but sharing as much information as we can, at least there's kind of shared understanding about why we do certain things. But I suspect that when we have these conversations too, we may realize that there are some things we do just because we've always done it. And, sometimes those are opportunities to take a look. If folks feel that that's an area they want to take a look at, but take a look and see, okay, maybe there's a different way now, especially, with different technology options, how can we make the best, what's our short-term goal, long-term goal at moving the needle just to a system that makes sense and doesn't feel like a system for people, but feels very much like an efficient system for, the professionals of the organizations too, at the same time, which is not always an easy line to strike, but that is our goal. And that's what we want to be working towards. So our plan is to keep folks updated about all of these too, as we start identifying dates and opportunities and links. We'll make sure we get it on the website, that we're putting it out on social media. Some of you guys have been amazing. If I send you guys different links and say, hey, can you, put this with your groups, advertise it, or I guess advertise is the right word, but just to circulate it broadly. Our quality council has been amazing at getting that information out to folks too. Just make sure that we have as much participation as possible. We're trying to develop some more specific listservs. We have one very broad listserv right now, which is great. We're getting information to people, but moving forward, I think what we really need is a specific listserv for individuals and families as we get resources up to date, and specific listservs for providers and service coordinators. So one of the changes, and it's with a heavy heart, but I do think that it's the right opportunity for us, is that the advisory committee itself, the way we know it today, is going to sunset after today's meeting. That doesn't mean I don't want folks to participate in all of the groups, though. It's just us taking the opportunity to change the structure of how we're meeting, making sure we have collaborative sessions. I love seeing people, but also just kind of coming and talking at everybody through PowerPoint once a month or once every couple of months. It gives us an opportunity for some engagement and some high level ideas, but I'd really love to move us into some of the specific and focused work group structures. All of these, from the forms to, folks, whether they're on the rate committee or they join as a guest, all of those opportunities to provide really direct and focused input, I think is just where the feedback is showing us the community wants to be, and expanding the participation as well. We had so many families asking to join, asking for ways to get involved, and, the membership, would there be more membership? And as we started thinking about that, like, yeah, we can open membership. What did the initial enrollment process look like? And, there were different things to go through. And then we kind of said, well, let's just go through the summer and have the different focused input, on the various topic areas. So that way we get as much participation as possible. I do want to say, though, I appreciate this group so much. The information you guys have shared and just the work that's happened over the last couple of years, and not for us to look back, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the amount of change, and just everybody working collectively, in this group particularly, making sure to present to BDS through the last couple of years when things are going well, when there are opportunities for enhanced collaboration or enhanced, just consideration at how things happen. This group has been a great North Star for me personally, to take a look and just see, are we communicating the right way and the right things? And then in the back, are we operationalizing things the way our stakeholders really want us to operationalize them? So thank you for, all of that feedback. And I know I see most of you, at different meetings throughout the month anyway, but, so it's not like it's the last time I'll see folks, but, it's been a great process, and I'm looking forward, though, to strengthening our communication with folks, and to really taking what you've all been telling us for a period of time and actioning those things, both, like I said, in how we communicate and when we communicate.
Jess, Kathy has her hand up.
Hey, Kathy.
Hello, my dear. I just like to offer a little bit of insight, if I may. For those of us who have been on this committee since its inception, when it originally was presented as being a steering committee, quite honestly, from my position, we never had any opportunity to steer anything, which is why we, as a committee, agreed to change the name of the group to an advisory. And I'm not really feeling like we've done a tremendous amount of that in a meaningful way. Yes, we've, as individuals, expressed our points of views on different issues as they've been discussed, et cetera. But I don't feel like this group of minds has been utilized as it should have been from the beginning, to actually be driving the process, as opposed to just a group of recipients of decisions that were made without our sometimes advice or consent. So I'm disappointed that, again, we weren't asked if we wanted to disband as a group. It was yet again another top-down decision. And Jess, none of this is personal, and you probably weren't even the one who made the decision. So, but I say what I think. And for the I think it's been a few years now. Many of us have been on this, or pretty darn close. It's been not what it could have been, given what the goal was to make our system better. I don't think we're in a better place all these years into this at all. So I'm hopeful that the decision to now break up into smaller little subgroups, and some of us, will participate on some or all of those, I am certain. But it's disappointing that that those of us who live this life, and who have devoted their lives to the work that supports that, I don't feel like we've been used to our greatest strengths to be the drivers of this process. So I just wanted to offer my 2 cents, and they're just my 2 cents, and I probably have dozens of you probably disagree with me, but so be it. But I just wanted to take the opportunity. I appreciate all the people who've been participating in this and hanging in there, and trying, fang and claw to prevent bad decisions from being made, and to make decisions that not yet made to be better. And hopefully we'll all continue to do that. So I also thank everyone for their certainly well-intentioned participation, and we still got to keep our fingers crossed that we can right the ship. So that's all I have to say. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Kathy, and your input is just so helpful. I think for me personally, but also for the team, everyone on this line's input is really helpful. And as I think about it too, and please don't just keep your fingers crossed. As you guys see something, raise a hand, throw a flag. I really hope that you all feel too that BDS is approachable, and that you can talk to us if you see something going well, or you see something going slightly astray. One of the goals in sharing all of the stakeholder engagement feedback is so that we can be transparent, so that if we start, if something starts moving away from where what we've all seen and what the community has identified, and the next things that we should be focusing on to really add value to people's lives, that all of our stakeholders collectively, not just one steering body, but all of our stakeholders collectively made the steering decision. Where do we want to go? What do we want to do? How do we, and then we can take different approaches of how to get there, and really start by that engagement. If we can learn from the past, and certainly having the corrective action plan be realized, and be something we're transitioning out of, and that's still work that's happening. So I don't want to make it seem as though, gee, that's done and behind us. But as we're moving away from things that were steeped in compliance, and now moving to the things that when we went out, some of the things that weighed on me the most heavily when we did former rounds of stakeholder engagement is when people would say, why we're telling you about different things, aging caregivers, workforce shortage. We're telling you about all these things, but it feels like you're just working on these couple of focus areas. And that was a really hard thing to to grapple with in the moment. When can we get to those things that people really want us to be looking at for the benefit of everything involved? keeping our federal match is critical. I don't want to minimize or downplay that and that responsibility. And again, peer states right now, several of them are embarking on the same journey that we just, that we're moving away from. I can't minimize that work and what it does. And Kathy, to your point, all of us kind of questioning, gee, where are things now? Because we haven't started jumping into some of these things that people really were asking for. So if we can learn from that past, and again, not to bring us to the past, but talk to people early on, make sure that we're transparent in what they've said and what those shared values are. Make sure that the priorities that we outline are based on those shared values and what's been developed based on community engagement. Engage often, early, often, throughout, and at all different times of the year to make sure that we're staying on track to that shared vision, and just be transparent in all of our actions and make sure that we're listening to people's feedback. So I hope that the shift, I truly hope that the shift feels like a response to what people have been asking for, and not like as though it's a top-down decision. I see there are a bunch of hands up though, so I'll stop talking because I want to make sure other folks have a chance to weigh in.
Tyler has
can't-
his hand up, and then
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Tyler, go ahead.
So from what I'm hearing is that this group is going to be disbanded by the end of the summer.
This particular group, Tyler, this will be the last meeting. There will be a lot of other groups that are going to be popping up though.
Okay, and how would we be able to access those groups?
We are going to put that information out on the website, Facebook. We're going to make sure to tap our partners at the area agencies or quality council, everyone who has access to folks to share how to become engaged.
Okay, thank you.
Go.
And then Stephanie.
Thank you. So yeah, I think this has been a lot of work over the last many years. I've been a part of it for much of the journey. And so I do really appreciate that. I just want to follow up on some of the things that Kathy mentioned and echo some of her concerns. I think that I see the benefits and the need to get into the weeds of a lot of these things now. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And it's not really a good use of time to have this group come together to get into the weeds of forms. I have really nothing to contribute in terms of forms. Not that I wouldn't mind coming to a meeting, but like, it's not my area of expertise. I'm not using them. So like, I'm not gonna, that would not be a good use of time. However, I do think that one of the problems with moving into more specific task oriented groups is that it's easy to lose sight of the big picture. Like, I think that whenever you have a focus group or you have a listening session, everybody has their own opinions about what should be the most important thing, typically often based on what their role is in the DD system. And that makes total sense. If you're the family of a 3-year-old, you've got different things that are on your list than a family of a 45-year-old or a service coordinator or the executive director of an area agency or someone like Disability Rights Center. So I think there's value in asking all of those opinions. But one of the things that I think this kind of model is losing is input from people who have committed to not looking at just their perspective on this, but like how the system comes together to prioritize certain things, how BDS makes decisions. I think it's a very different question to ask someone, what do you think is most important, which is going to be directly related to their part of their job. But then you say, and we even struggle with this, then these are like the 50 things that are on the list that people have said are important. And now BDS, hopefully with some advice and counsel from people who are committed to saying it's not just me, it's the big picture. This is what we think is most important for BDS. And so I just think it's really important for you all to really think about how you gather input and you make those difficult decisions when everything is important about what's going to be the most important and what's going to be your priority. If it's not going to be this group, how that's going to happen.
Yeah, my hope is that we can make sure we continue to engage with some critical groups that have been around for multiple years. And I think we can just, continue to do better and continue to collaborate with them. So our family support councils, our quality council, CISNY and our area agencies for that expertise and experience and just, what the different regions need, our DD councils, making sure that we're, to your point, Stephanie, talking to folks about the bigger picture too. And there will be more information on, just timelines and how things work, especially when we start talking about rates and more information to come. In addition, the plan is still to have different, not focused listening sessions, if that makes sense. Make sure that we're getting out and talking to people too, in different groups as well. So those listening sessions that we had with service coordinators, providers, area agencies, we want to make sure that we're doing that on a consistent cadence. Right now, and again, we can and will update this too. If we feel that there's a lack of input in any area, we'll change it, we'll adjust it. I think it's important that this continues to evolve, but I do think that we have strong structures right now to connect with folks to get that information and really leaning into that expertise too.
Marissa has her hand up.
Hey, Marissa. Oh, you are on mute.
It didn't catch. Okay. So I appreciate, you and Lori have really, it's really clear that you are trying to right the ship. You're coming into a very quick systems change that was, the project management. I think there's a bunch of us on here that would say like we would have loved to see something a little different, kind of going to what Kathy was just sharing. I think it's not enough to raise the flag. If you have people raising a flag, some evidence of follow through. You guys are doing a lot of work, and I really appreciate it. And I think that you're working on a lot of the right things. But I think sometimes it's really difficult to see the bigger picture. And if you have a family that's giving you feedback, sharing this is how we're going to incorporate that, or having some sort of FAQ or something, helping people make those connections to make sure that they feel like they're heard. And I think that there's also the elephant in the room, right? So housing and staffing. And I think that you've talked a little bit about some of those things, talking about those career lattices, talking about some of the changes that you're making, trying to work toward addressing those. But again, just communicating that, if you would toot your own horn, share that you are taking that feedback and actually bringing it in and incorporating that into what the changes are that are coming. It would just be helpful to really have that be clear for people.
Thanks, Marissa. So one of the things we are developing, I didn't mention it here, and I really probably should have included it in the deck, is a tracker of sorts. So if folks have followed any of our rule work, we have a pretty comprehensive tracker that comes out. We sent out some one-pagers for the information sessions, but the goal too is to have a tracker of sorts on the different topics that were presented and what BDS is doing with them. What are the initiatives that are underway? How are we starting to address those things? And also, are we a leader in it or are we a partner in it? Because some of the things, housing, for example, BDS isn't going to be able to resolve that unilaterally. It's going to take collaboration, partnership with state and non-state agencies too. But what are the things that are happening and how can other people get involved too from their seat in the stands? So it's amazing input, Marissa, and I agree. And it's really important to me that when people give us feedback, that they're able to either see their feedback incorporated in the work or see the response and that feedback was taken. That way, it doesn't just seem like, that proverbial, we give feedback and it goes in a drawer somewhere because we don't know what happened with it. So I think that that's an excellent idea and something that we're in the process of actioning now, specifically with regard to the information sessions. But that's something that we want to continue on to be able to show and demonstrate to different groups the work that's happening and the things that we're trying to get involved in to address a lot of these things in multiple different ways. This is just kind of the glimpse of the communication aspect, but multi-pronged, multifaceted approach is at really making sure that we're being open and transparent, and then also receptive to feedback from folks if they kind of see that high level vision is, maybe askew or, something's going on. The goal is, if that happens though, that we'll have messaged that very clearly and it won't feel like a surprise. If we've got one initiative in mind that we're working towards and we have to change courses, that through our different communication structures and ways of communicating with people, that they'll feel informed that there's a change coming or a change in course.
Jess, we have a couple things on the chat. One is from Suzanne. It says, there is not a funding wait list, but a provider wait list due to the staffing shortage. And then Ellen is asking a question, is there a role for quality counsel to see the macro view that you just described? Stephanie.
Thank you. Yes. So Sue, great input, and is probably harkening back to some comments a few slides ago where we were saying, great, we don't have a wait list in New Hampshire, but what we have are folks that have access to funding for services, but they're, for various reasons, there aren't providers or staff available for the provision of services. So that in and of itself, still means that people are in some way, shape, or form waiting for services. And I see, and Ellen, thank you. And we kind of talked about that a little bit. Stephanie, I won't put you on the spot, but if you want to respond to that, please go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's the potential for a role for the quality council. We've done some of this informally. I think that it would be good, to be deliberate and to make sure people understand the kind of decisions that they're being asked to give input on. We do a lot of this kind of on a lot of times we'll have broad discussions and people will bring up concerns, which are good. And we've been trying to do better about following up with those. But I think there is a lot of potential if BDS is particularly trying to prioritize, 20 different things and you really only have the capacity to do 3 or 4 of them. Like, I think the quality council could be a great resource as people come there and try to help you figure that kind of stuff out, because, you're not going to, at least in my opinion, if you do 20 things, but you don't do any of them well, then you're never going to finish them, versus doing 3 or 4 things, doing them really well, kind of getting done with them and then moving on to the next 3 or 4. But yeah, I think we could definitely talk about what that could look like in terms of particularly a more formal ask for the quality council.
Okay.
I absolutely agree, Stephanie. So I think that's a great opportunity, and we can talk with the council too to see what that looks like and how to build that structure out.
Jen has her hand up.
And I apologize because I know we're over time, but I just wanted to kind of follow up on some of the comments. So I know like when we first started this, we had the other work groups. So I know like the waiver work group, we did a huge amount of work on the waivers and stuff. So I did feel like my input was, valued and brought forward in a way of more, being involved in it. I do want to throw a caution to, having people just throw up a flag. As someone that was throwing up flags and there wasn't really a response until we went into crisis. I just want to make sure that we're not causing that for other families. And I also want to make sure, because if we're saying like we want to give families an opportunity and others to give input, saying we're going to go to the quality council or the family support council, which both require you to be a member and be on it for a extended period of time, doesn't actually hit the goal that you're doing, because quality council membership is very limited on who sits there and and ensuring that they're actually bringing the feedback in the way they're supposed to. So I would just caution that we're not just going to move to another group that it's the same thing, requiring something that families would have an extremely hard time as they would here, coming to a meeting in the middle of the day if they're not paid or given an option for that.
Yeah, definitely. And not to imply that the quality council would take over engagement with families and individuals through listening sessions and, similar formats to what we just did over the spring and the winter. But I think in terms of the quality council's varied expertise, just different people and different roles and different interactions with the service system. And sometimes when you get competing priorities through all of that input, as we reach out, the council members really do have great expertise and ability to just weigh in on, okay, amongst the sea of options, to Stephanie's point, what are the things that we really do need to prioritize in taking in those differing points of view, but also looking at it from a system-wide health point of view. What are the structures and the things that the system needs to make sure that we're meeting our obligations, both, from a standpoint of what we're required to do, but also fundamentally following those shared values. So, I mean, very strong point, Jen, and I'm glad you said it, so that if there was any, miscommunication in how that was delivered, there will be multiple ways to connect with the Bureau and just to share information. So I think in terms of raising a flag, because I hope that families and individuals feel like they have strong structures with their service coordination agencies, their area agencies, the DRC, like anybody that can help them if something is going on that they're experiencing. But from the throw up a flag standpoint, that's mostly just, hey, if you see like the big vision and what we're working towards and those shared values we've identified, if something's steering away from that, that's really what I want folks to kind of say, hey, Jess, it felt like BDS had really prioritized A, B, and C, but what I'm seeing is, work more in the area of X, Y, and Z. Can we talk about that?
Ellen has her hand up.
Yeah, hi. Just one thought as you, I don't know, start sunsetting work groups, or I think per Kathy's comments, there's an awful lot to be learned about like business practice from this advisory committee, and kind of how it was run. And I would just offer the suggestion that depending on the feedback that you want to receive, like zipping a survey monkey out to the members of this committee to say what worked really well, what was frustrating, what would you suggest doing differently in the future. I think you could learn a lot.
Yeah, Alan, I love that. If folks would be willing to entertain that, I think that would be great, so that we make sure to preserve what worked well in this group, and we make sure that we learn from the things that just didn't quite go according to folks' expectations or what they envisioned when they signed up for the group, and make sure that in the other groups that exist that we're leaning into the things that worked well, and that we're not repeating history in areas that we don't want to repeat history.
Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome. So I know we're a bit over time. I apologize, folks, but thank you to everybody that stayed on. I'm happy to take a few more questions or stay behind for a couple of minutes if folks still have questions, but want to respect that people probably have 11:30s or, preparing for their 12s too. So. Right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day, and I will be seeing folks in other groups, but have a nice afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.